Welcome to the Mindset Playground. Whether you're thinking about starting your own business or just looking to become inspired, award-winning entrepreneur LouAnne Hunt is here putting into practice what she teaches every day. She's a certified Canfield trainer in the Success Principles and Diabetes Prevention Program lifestyle coach. So please welcome the host of the Mindset Playground, LouAnne Hunt.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Mindset Playground, where you're going to get your daily dose of positivity. And I'm your host, LouAnne Hunt. And I want you to know that you are always one decision away from a completely different life. Now, I promise, if you watch the Mindset Playground, it will never be dull or boring. You may laugh, you may cry, but no matter what, you will leave with a dose of positivity. So today, I have such an amazing guest on the playground with me. She is such a good friend of mine, and I just love this person. She has the most beautiful soul I have ever seen or met. Her name is Cathleen Elle, and she is a transformational speaker, certified master coach, and healer. And boy, is she good. Visionary guide for life shattering events, which is really interesting, and an award-winning author. Her book, Shattered Together, A Mother's Journey from Grief to Belief, is a wonderful book, and I can't wait to talk to Cathleen all about it. So Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me on the playground today. How are you doing?
Thank you, LouAnne, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you and an honor. So thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Well, Kathleen, I've been working with you for a while now. It seems like we've been working kind of together online because of the good old pandemic. But actually, a couple weeks ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to actually meet you in person and work with you in person. And it was just so much fun. How did you get into this line of work?
In 2010, I experienced a life-shattering event, and my son took his life when he wasn't speaking with me, and actually wrote a note saying he didn't want me at his service. And so, as you know, a successful leader, previous to that, I was a legislator, I worked for the governor, and I lobbied for about 25 years of my professional life. So most of my professional life, I was of service. And so when my son took his life, it just shattered me. Whatever that split second, it was anything that happened prior to that, my life was no longer the same. And what mattered to me no longer mattered. And so I was holding all kinds of guilt and shame and blame. Like, if I can be of service to so many people in my community, my state, and change people's lives from domestic violence to civil unions to DNA database of convicting or exonerating sex offenders, I changed, I was a part of all of those changes, and yet I couldn't save my son. So I thought. And I knew when Logan died, I could no longer exist the way I was existing. And about 3 months after Logan's departure from his human body, I was laying on his grave, and I was begging and pleading and bawling and screaming and saying, whoever, whatever took my son, please take me too. I couldn't exist anymore like that. His sister Ashley was in college in South Carolina. I was in Vermont, and I felt isolated and alone and really cloaked with guilt and shame. And as I was laying there, I was just like, I wasn't saying, how could I take my life? I was like, please take my life, And suddenly my body became very, very calm and clear. And I had this message download saying, if this happened in your life, you're meant to do something with it. Now go do it. And I was like, okay, I have the media contacts, I have the connections. I can be the spokesperson for suicide prevention. And what I did is I delved into over masking, I have to say, of doing radio interviews, TV interviews, and being the spokesperson for suicide prevention and being aware of what are the signs around suicide. But every time I went to an interview, it crushed me for about a week. I really literally was immobile from two days to a week because I was so cloaked with guilt, and it took so much energy for me to speak the truth that it just added more shame and blame internally and guilt. And so I knew that I needed to step into my journey differently. And so that's when I started to do that. And, from cognitive thought therapists to mediums to energy healers. And eventually in 2017, 7 years later, and in the meantime, I had gotten married and all that other stuff. So there's no need to go into that. But in 2017, I left my husband. I left my job. That's not true. In 2017, I left my husband. In 2018, I went to a 1 Day of Greatness with Jack Canfield in Boston. And it was then that I realized that his formula, E plus R equals O, it's an event occurs plus your reaction or response equals your outcome. So basically, the only control you have over that formula is your response or your reaction, which creates how you live your life. And I knew in that moment that that's what I did 3 months after Logan's departure, human departure. And I knew I needed to work with Jack. So that's when I got into the personal development. Then he introduced me to Dr. Deb Sandella, which is the emotional processing. And then I got into the plant medicines. And so for the last 6 years, I left my job, I left my home state, I started my business, and here I am.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
quite the journey, the transformation. Congratulations. That's wonderful. And
Yeah,
doing what it is that you love to do.
yeah. It's a life-shattering event that really cracked me open. And that's why I said Shattered Together for the title of the book, because every event in our life, there are events that are traumatic. All of us have a traumatic event in our life. It's the emotions that are trapped around those events that are the untruths, the guilt, the shame, the blame, like it's all my fault, I should have saved him. It is not that. The fact is, Logan, while I found a void in my life from his humanness, he also opened up the opportunity for me to help, for us, spiritually, and me to help energetically shift the frequency of the world and help thousands of other people move through their pain. To create the truth, to create space to see the truth, that it is an opportunity to dissolve all of the pain that you've experienced in your life, so where you can really be the light that you're meant to be. And so I get to create a space of safety, of support, of compassion, with zero judgment on anything. I've worked with many, many people, and most of my clients, I would say 98.8%, and even friends and people, associates say, I've told you something that I've never told anybody. I've been married for 4 years and I never told my spouse that. So I get to create the space for people to free themselves from the untruths that they're hiding in their body, which causes dis-ease in your body. It causes dysfunctional relationships. It causes repeating the patterns of what you've known as a child. There's so many connections here. And I just know that your mind, body, and soul is one. And if one is off, then it's all like shattered a little, like it's cracked, and there's a cloak, so you don't get to see or experience the light that you really are.
Wow, that's so amazing. So if I can ask, how old was Logan?
He was 19 and he struggled,
Okay.
you know, he used cannabis to mask his pain. And, you know, there was challenges, you know, I think every parent goes through these challenges of like, you know, he's a teenager, is it hormonal, you know, like it's a typical mood swings. And then we tried multiple things. And, you know, I was the best parent I could be with all the love that I had for him in the moment of what I knew. You know, I did the best I could with what I knew, with the love that I had in my heart. And today I am free from that guilt and shame and blame. And, you know, would I give my life today so he could grow old with his sister? Absolutely. I would do that. And that's not an option. You know, his physical presence isn't going to be here, but I can tell you by moving through the untruths, it connects me deeper with the energetic presence of all that is, which means our loved ones never go away. Their humanness does, and we get to ebb and flow through the grief of their physical presence not being here. Yeah, as we ebb and flow through those emotions and allow those emotions to flow, we connect greater with the energetic presence. We know that energy never dies. And what are we made up of? Is energy. Our physical presence is more dense energy, but our soul is energy. It's all that is. And
That's
so it
wonderful.
really
And
has, go ahead.
sorry, I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
say, you made a comment earlier when we were together in California. You just made the comment when I was talking to you about it earlier that we were all energetically connected. And can I just ask you to expand on that a little bit? Like how we do that? How is it all just the general law of attraction, or what's your take on it?
Well, that's a really deeper question. So let me just feel into that. And I usually just like become the vessel of channeled information. So I just like, I will share with you what's coming through for me. So energetically, like there's different levels of frequency, right? And so when you walk into a crowded room, and you know, before you walk in, you're all excited and you're happy and you're dressed up and you look great and you're looking forward to seeing a bunch of people, and you walk into the room and all of a sudden you feel heavy and and contracted, and you're like, what just happened? But what you're experiencing is the energy with all of those people in the room. So you're experiencing the collective energy. So you get to be more aware of your flow of the energy that you're sitting in. And you know, universally, that's all we are is energy. The earth is energy. Like we're all connected in that way. So right now, presently in the world, there's a lot of anxiety and fear and discomfort and unrest. And I don't sit in that. A lot of people can feel that and they don't realize what they're feeling, so they think there's something going on in themselves, that they're depressed, like something's wrong with their life, like what's happening. And so it's important to know what you put in your body, what your environment is around you, what you're watching, who are your friends, who are your closest connections. And you can feel the density. If you become just curious about what you're feeling and you're in the moment, you're feeling the density of the energy or the expansion of the energy. And so if you're putting a lot of fear into your body by watching the news, by watching by, you know, going to bed with the news and waking up with the news, you're putting that in your body. You're putting the fear in your body. And the fact is, there's a lot of good going on in this world. there's some really, really high vibrating people that are here to help you raise your own vibration, to become aware that you have control over that. And not only do you have control over your energy, but the higher frequency you are is the higher frequency you're going to expand out into the world. So a lot of people talk about protecting your energy, about, putting a bubble around yourself and not letting those negative energies in. I shift that a little, like I create a different story around it. And I feel like the more bright we are and the more that we are able to share that out in the world, then you don't have to worry about taking on someone else's energies, because you're expanding your love, and there's nothing more powerful than love.
Wow.
Nothing more powerful than love. Fear cannot outstand love.
Wow. That's a great answer to my question. And it makes sense. And that's exactly how you feel. And if I can add to that, whenever you're in a meeting, say at work, do you leave the meeting feeling like, wow, that was a lot of work? Do you know what I mean? Like you're still not clear on what the topic was or what anybody really said or where to go next. Whereas when you do have a meeting, such as what we had in California, you do feel so much lighter, so much freer, uplifted, and a lot more energy. I found that even though they were really long days, that, yeah, I was tired. I was tired, physically tired, but I had that energy to get up and do it again and to see everybody again. It was so
Yeah.
wonderful.
So what you were experiencing, LouAnne, was, so what she's talking about is the Breakthrough to Success event with Jack Canfield, and we assisted at that meeting. And what we do before we even go, before attendees even come into the room, is we set the energy in the room. So we create a safe space that's full of compassion and a way to transmute pain. So what we were experiencing was the high vibrating frequency that was not only set to begin with, but then Jack actually magnifies that, because he does his own process. And then when he's up there, he is putting it out there. And so people feel that. And so they again, no, 1 + 1 isn't 2. 1 + 1 in a room is times 1, like it ends up magnifying. So it's just like when you're in a mastermind, right? If you're doing everything on your own, you're feeling alone, you're feeling like you have to do it all, like there's no one there to help you, like there's all kinds of feelings around that. But when you're in a mastermind, when you leave the mastermind, you're like, oh my gosh, like what someone else said, I would have never thought of that. But that's because the group of people are not only 6 people, it's 6,000 times, like you're getting the additional, there's infinite possibilities, right? And so if your brain is only stuck on what you know from your experiences, then sometimes it's difficult to be expansive from there. So when you have other people in the room, it opens up the infinite possibilities to come in. And it can be easy like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, why did I make it so hard? You don't have to say, why did you make it so hard? You can say, you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This made it so much easier for me to step forward and take another step. So when you do walk into a room and it's heavy and it's dense, just really breathe. Stop for a moment. You don't have to close your eyes. Breathe, connect back in to your higher source, like your power. You have a higher self. You're connected to the divine spirit, whether you say it's God or universe or Buddha or whatever you want to call the infinite, all that is. You can connect back into that and then expand that. And so as you walk through the room and you're in that love and light and you're happy, you're shifting that energy in that room. So it's not work. You're just being who you really are, which is light.
Wow.
and love. Yeah. So it's not hard for me. I don't get depleted in most runs. And what I will say is when I'm in an environment where the frequency is more dense, I feel that. And then I decide whether that is a place that I choose to continue to be with and in or not. Like, for example, I was a part of a group of people who invested in something. And I felt the frequency for me to be very dense with the group of people, not the actual investment, but the group of people. And I stuck with that for about a year to say, okay, what information do I get to see and feel to become aware of the untruths that I'm holding in my body? And how can I best elevate the frequency? And then when it just got to a point where I was like, you know what? My time's complete here. You know, I see this frequency is not going to shift with certain people, and that's fine. I just choose not to be part of it anymore. And so I exited in a graceful, loving way. I hold zero resentment or regrets. I actually am so grateful that I had the experience because it brought so much to my world.
Wow. Yeah. I love working with other people, like-minded people, especially. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward to the book because I'm excited about your book. So when did you decide that you wanted to write your book?
I knew right after Logan departed his humanness that I needed to write a book. I knew that, but I didn't write it for 10 years later. Like it really took 10 years for me to heal enough to be in the truth of what I could write. And I will say that I didn't write it alone. You know, Logan was a part of it. The Ryan was a part of it. I had a ghostwriter who helped me. She, you know, she's known me for years, and she went through it with me. So, you know, she would write something, I'd read it, I'd, you know, go through it. And I just feel like it's an opportunity. It's a little bit of a memoir. It's a self-help book, and it's practices and tools at the end of each chapter on how you can stay present with where you are in the moment. So each chapter has a self practice that I sat with to help others to see what might work for them. So everyone's different. In the book, you can read it from chapter 1 to the end, or you can open it up and read it to wherever you are, because that's where you were directed in that moment. So it's written in a way that you don't have to read it consistently. You can just take it in little spurts. Because I also know what it's like to be in that very deep grief kind of self-sabotage, self-suffering kind of thing, you know? And so, yeah, the book has helped many.
That's great. And so do you think that you might have a follow-up book in you, or are you working on
It is.
anything
It's
else?
actually, yeah, I keep getting that over the last 6 years, I've had the most transformation out of my life ever. And I keep getting nudged by the higher powers to be like, now it's time to write your next book. It's time to add to it. Because when I wrote it, it was the end of the intense pain. Yeah, I hadn't really delved deeply into the past traumas, the ancestral patterns that were stuck in my body that I was able to dissolve. And the importance for me is plant medicines, breath work, meditations, the things that really help you connect and clear and uncover what you've been telling yourself for so long. Because, you know, as a child, my birth father was an alcoholic, and it was a very abusive man. I hold much compassion for him now because I have a whole different story around what I experienced. And um, I was physically, emotionally, and sexually abused as a child. And the sexual abuse was not my dad, thankfully, but his father, cousins, neighbor, like it was. And so it was a pretty um, challenging time for me. And I created a story as a kid that I was unworthy, I was discardable, that I was unlovable. And I never really felt what love felt like. And so I created that pattern because I had untruths stuck in there around the experiences I had. And it's normal. When you're 3 years old, you don't know what it's like when your father's shooting at you. Like you can't develop a story that, yes, I'm lovable and they're serving me because this is going to help me in my life. You create a story. So I followed that pattern and I became very successful as far as a career goes because I was driven, and every step I took was never enough because I was always trying to prove to the world that I was worthy to be there. But the fact was, I was really trying to prove to myself I was worthy to be there. So every step that I took, I ran for office before I was 30 and won. I was appointed by the governor to be the director of housing, transportation, and homelessness for the entire Agency of Human Services. So it's the largest agency of state government. And that still wasn't enough. And then I became the executive of a large commercial contractors association and lobbied, and that still wasn't enough. I still wasn't enough. So I was always proving on the outside. And then when Logan, suddenly departed this world in his humanness, I knew that I had to, like, it wasn't working. I had to go deep in my healing journey in order to free my soul.
Wow. That sounds amazing, though, that you've actually done all of that work. And now you are out there helping so many others. And I know that you are because there's many times when I'll be thinking something and you catch me on it. Thinking or feeling something and you catch me on it. And it's just quite amazing. And you always seem to have that way of shifting it in me so that I look at it differently. And I guess that's how you work with people, right? Is that what you do? Like how you
Oh,
work with people when they hire you or even just talk to you?
I love to say I'm a guide because I get to be the bridge from the untruths to the truths. And I get to walk beside people as they take back their own sovereignty, that they empower themselves. I really like when you said, I catch you on it and I help you. I can't remember the exact words, but I didn't do anything other than ask you questions and
Right.
create this loving, compassionate, unjudgmental space for you to find your own truths within you. And so you free your own soul by me creating a space with my intuitive ability to be able to ask certain questions for you to see the truth inside. And so, you mentioned that when I'm working with people, usually in retreats or masterminds or, groups, I do one-on-one as well. And mostly it's in groups. And when I'm working with people, they're they're I don't want to take their power. I want them to take their power back. And so I get to create that space of knowing that, I can channel. If I'm working like with you, I can say, oh, at 3 years old you experienced X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? What I'm hearing, what I'm sensing is this is what happened and this is where you are. And usually it's right on. And so then we can recreate that story that you had developed around the experience you had. We can recreate that story around the truth versus uncover the untruths, which means you develop the unworthy, whatever emotion that you had. And then you recreate a truth that creates more compassion for yourself, more compassion for the people who are involved. Like my dad, he did the best he could with what he knew, with what he had, with the love that he had. And to be able to know the experience he had, he did much better for me than what he experienced. And so I get to change the story. You know, I often tell this particular story. When my father was shooting at us, my mom had brought my sister and I into the bathroom. She put her and my sister in the bathtub, and I was the younger, smallest one. And she separated me and put me between, in a different space. In that moment, as a 3-year-old, my brain said, oh my God, I'm unlovable. I'm not safe. I'm discardable. Like they're there and I'm over here. But as I went back and was experiencing it in a safe way, I was able to experience it through my mother's eyes or feelings, my mother's awareness. And I was like, oh my gosh, she put me over there because there wasn't enough room in the bathtub for all three of us to be safe. And she was willing to separate herself from me because she wanted to be safe. She wanted us all to be safe. And she was willing to be over and over and over again because she was afraid she was going to lose her children, because she had already lost her only son when she was pregnant for me. So she was scared if she left, she was going to lose her other children. And that wasn't possible. So she was stuck in her fear. And how I know that's true is because after I went through this process for myself, I asked her about it without any prompting. I just said, so tell me about this. What were you feeling? And she shared exactly what I had pulled through.
Wow.
So you're able to hold more compassion for people. And it's even more than forgiveness. A lot of people talk about forgiveness, but is there really anything to forgive? Really think about that question. Is there really anything to forgive? Because it is my belief, and my beliefs can change, of course, but it is my belief that before we even come here, we work with the souls of all the people who have had a significant impact in your life to say, will you play this role in my life so I can help dissolve the untruths that I've been carrying for lifetimes after lifetimes? And often they'll say, I really don't want to play that role, but I love you enough that I will do it for you. So think about that. Isn't that a different feeling when you're thinking about the most difficult experiences that you've had in your life? There's no more blame, there's no more shame, there's no more victimizing. And it takes time and you have to process it a little, like you don't have to go in and re-experience it, but it's in a safe way. You get to recreate stories around, and let's face it, everything we're experiencing is our imagination. So why not imagine something better than worse?
True. That's very true. You can tell your mind anything and it will believe you because it doesn't know the difference between what's real or what's not real. What that bridge, like you said, that bridge is just one bridge. So it could be either or. So false evidence appearing
or
real.
Something else.
Yeah.
Or something else, because it's infinite possibilities. There's infinite ways there's infinite possibilities out of everything. And so, yeah, it's just creating space for people. I usually work with people who have been pretty successful in their life. I've found that the pattern that of people who I attract are lawyers and doctors and architects and congressional and psychologists and professors. So those are the kind of anesthesiologists. So those are the kind of people who are high functioning in their careers, and then a life-shattering event happens in their life and they find that this no longer serves me. Like, I'm lost, I'm heavy, I don't have the energy, I don't want to go to work, this doesn't matter anymore. What am I doing? Now, a life-shattering event doesn't have to be as shattering as mine. It could be a divorce. It could be a health diagnosis. It could be a loss of a job. It could be anything. And
You're
it's all
right.
about the stories that we're carrying, the stories that we're carrying from our younger selves that we haven't seen the truth yet, that creates a pattern in our life. And so there's no blame, there's no shame in that. It's just an opportunity to get different feedback.
Right.
And our brain, and I just need to say, our brain thinks what our body is telling it. So what we're thinking, and again, this is a little different than a lot of people talk about, but what we're thinking is being informed by the untruths or the expansion, the contraction in your body or the expansion. And so if you find yourself in a pattern of unhealthy relationships, one, multiple jobs that never fill your soul, um, um, conflict with females, like there are all kind, or feeling alone, thinking you have to do it all on your own. If you find yourself in those patterns, know that there's an untruth in that. Know that you're carrying something that's not true, and it can be dissolved pretty quickly and easily.
Wow. That's great.
Then you can work
So
with the
what's the best
habits.
way to reach you?
On CathleenElle.com, or on social media, it's Cathleen Elle Inspires. And there's retreats that I host, and there's a mastermind I'm starting at the beginning of the year. So I'd love to have you join me. If you're interested, just connect with me.
Yes. And so I always ask all of my um, guest stars, could you leave us with 3 nuggets, 3 of your top nuggets, and let the audience just enjoy you. So let's celebrate you and leave us with 3 nuggets.
3 nuggets of what they could be doing, or 3 nuggets of what? I'm sorry.
Maybe your favorite sayings, maybe your favorite feelings, however, or maybe just 3 things that you want me to consider or think about.
Great. So one quote that I love, it's Peter Crone's quote, is, "What happened happened the way it happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't." And that's the importance of realizing there's untruths there. That's one. The second is, be curious about what's happening in your life instead of complaining. If something's not working in your life, be curious about that. There's something that you're telling yourself that's not true, that's causing a pattern in your life. And the third is, really create a practice every morning. Wake up by breathing, just focusing on your breath and being in appreciation for all that is. And future create your day by saying, okay, I'm in this peaceful place and I'm going to have this amazing interview with LouAnne. I can't wait to share whatever comes through. I know it's going to help someone or some, many. I get to, play with other people in the world, and I'm going to meet someone that my smile is just going to change their life. So was that 3?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. And to all of my listeners, thank you so much for supporting me and watching the Mindset Playground. I really do appreciate you. And visit my website at LouAnneHunt.ca. That's LouAnneHunt.ca. And there you will find pictures and links for all of my guests coming up and my previous guests as well. And join us on the Mindset Playground. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at LouAnne Hunt, and like and share this video. Smash that share button, send it out to everybody you know, because you never know who needs to hear those golden nuggets that Kathleen gave us today. So until the next time, Thank you once again for stopping by the Mindset Playground.
This has been the Mindset Playground with host LouAnne Hunt. Tune in each week for another daily dose of positivity right here on the Mindset Playground.